Hari Om to all, and I am happy we could smoothly go through these 5 evenings. We have arrived at the last evening. It fills all of us, the speaker and the listeners, participants, with much happiness. And from my side, I must quickly acknowledge the hard work that has gone into putting this together. Mohan Hejmadi and Nimish Sharma have taken the lead, especially all these technicalities of the Zoom and uh, the network. And Vibha Chaitanya is 24 by 7 supporting all these functions with very many kinds of her contributions. And we have had the joy of listening to nice bhajans. Sri Parna Nandi on the first day, Madhumita Bhaskar second day, Satvik and Anuradha, then Ashwini Kulkarni on the fourth day. And today, Shruti and Sajit delighted us with this beautiful Krishna bhajan, Krishna ni begane baro. I think having heard our 5 Gita programs, he must now come quickly to us. Begane baro means please come quickly to us. I must acknowledge that right when this program was conceived, our project manager Shahid and a young lady from Bangalore, Ranjani Gotur, they created nice slides, nice graphics with a little music also to spread the word. Many of you must have got either the graphic by Shahid or the musical video, a kind of a little movie from Ranjani of Bangalore, or you got perhaps both. And every morning, Dolly Seth has been putting on the WhatsApp circles a picture quote of Sri Krishna, a message from Gita, of course, worded by me. And last but not the least, today's PowerPoint slides, I have taken help from another young student in San Jose, Soumya Kandukuri. She did half of the PowerPoint slides, and then I touched it up further with, of course, some more content. And just before moving further, I especially express my sincere appreciation of a number of participants, some of them a bit elderly. They themselves are very esteemed teachers. Dr. Nagaraju every evening has been with us, the president of Suvarnamukhi Samskriti Dhama in Bangalore. Professor K.P. Pandey has been an octogenarian, has been participating, and he is giving me some special inputs too. So friends, the list goes very long, and without mentioning name, there are many others who have really been very encouraging, and I think we will have more such programs. We will let you know. Some people have said that it's better to have during the weekdays, so probably Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday, we'll have a program next month. We will let you know. The idea of that suggestion was sometimes, even though many people work from home, Saturday and Sunday families want to spend time together. This feeling was expressed by one of the enthusiastic participants. All right, all Sri Krishna's grace. We are here now, and let me, with a short prayer, begin this evening's discourse on emotional intelligence in Bhagavad Gita. Baddhenāñjalina natena shirasa gatrei saromodgamaihi kanthena swaragadgadena nayanena udgirna bashpambuna nityam tvaccharanaravinda ध्यानामृतास्वादिनाम् अस्माकं सरसीरुहाक्ष सततं सम्पद्यतां जीवितम्. Om Shri Krishna Paramatmane Namaha. On this last session, we have relationship management as the theme. It follows social awareness. And both social awareness and relationship management require, in the first place, emotional self awareness and self management. Only when we manage ourselves well, we can relate better. Self management is a necessary condition but not a sufficient condition. In fact, we in the East have been sometimes criticized that our spirituality is all about turning within and we do not reach out adequately. That criticism may or may not be fully true. That is another question. We have our own ways, we have our own culture. In fact, our dynamics for centuries has been to prevent many problems, whereas in certain other cultures, problems are created and then with much exhibitionism, those problems are solved. So sometimes comparing different cultures is like comparing an orange with an apple. An orange is an orange, an apple is an apple. Each culture, each Samskriti has its own strengths. But we need to be open to suggestions, criticism. We need to be receptive to any such thoughts that we are not reaching out much. We turn inward, we withdraw, and so on. Let's examine that. Anyway, what actually is this relationship management? So we will examine, and to facilitate that, let us go for a few simple slides as we have been doing every evening. So here we are, and why is it not going full screen? Just a minute. Ah, now it went full screen. All right. Relationship management and how Gita can help us enhance this particular area of skills required in the overall scenario. Now, what does relationship management mean? We should be very clear. So, we have 3 points here mainly. First of all, and above all else, relationship management is our ability to use the third area, awareness of our emotions and emotions of others, to manage interactions successfully. Whether we like it or not, every day we are into very many interactions. Even during these COVID 19 times, though we may not be meeting many people face to face, over email, over telephone, over video calls, and perhaps many other ways, we are interacting. We have to say yes to certain situations, we have to say no in certain scenarios, and it is much more. So, we will go a little more into this managing interactions in the next slide. But secondly, in this slide, I must point out that relationship management involves clear communication. Clear communication. First of all, those of us who don't communicate at all, who don't even answer questions, who postpone, who just say everything is okay, oh, don't worry about it, and so on. We are at one extreme that is not going to help in relationship management. Number one, we must communicate. Number two, how do we communicate? Other day from the Gita, I had said something, anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitan chayat and so on. But a much better and more comprehensive treatment of the topic we get in Valmiki Ramayana. And I must hasten to add that Valmiki Ramayana or Mahabharata and so on, all of them are aligned with Bhagavad Gita. In the hierarchy of scriptures in Sanatana Dharma, we have the Vedas on top, Shruti, and then comes the category called Smriti. Bhagavad Gita is one of the Smritis. And then comes Itihasa, Ramayana and Mahabharata, then come the Puranas. Therefore, if I quote something from Valmiki Ramayana, it actually follows the principles supplied by Bhagavad Gita. There are 9 verses in Kishkinda Kanda when for the first time Hanuman meets Ram and Lakshman and there is a dialogue. And the way Hanuman spoke that day impressed Lord Rama so much that Lord Rama turns to Lakshmana and says, look at the way this representative of Sugriva has spoken. People should learn the art of communication from this ambassador, this Duta, this messenger. And in those 9 verses, I especially quote one, how our speech should be, or even written communication should be, avistaram, asandigdam, avilambitam, adrutam. 4 negations. Avistaram. It should not be too elaborate. Be to the point. Don't start or don't go for a long story with irrelevant information. Vistara is here unnecessary details. But that doesn't mean you make it so brief that people wonder what the message is. The next one is asandigdam. Sandigdha is giving rise to doubt what the message is all about. So it should not be too brief, missing out on clarity. And then the delivery should not be with too many gaps in between. So therefore, vilambitam. And then the other extreme, the delivery should not be like a machine gun, dub, 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 and so fast you speak and the other person is unable to grasp. And a few more tips are given over there. Of course, this is verbal communication. To an extent, it can extend to written communication. And communication is much more than merely speaking or writing. Some of us who are a little good in language can speak well and write well. But in real life situations, we find we are not able to get through because it sometimes requires right action at the right time. Somebody may speak very well, but if he doesn't act at the right point of time, the communication by that inaction will make matters go for a bad turn. All his wonderful speech or a beautiful email that he had written would go a waste. Therefore, communication is much more than just speaking or writing. It is doing things too, because those deeds also send out a message. Thirdly, we have the readiness in relationship management. We need to be ready to resolve conflicts. In the face of conflicts, we should not turn away or we should not say, I don't want to handle this. Just other day I heard in some small town, there was some wedding that was going to take place. Of course, before this COVID scenario, in February or so. And that family had some tension. The elder brother especially was short-tempered. He would often scold his younger brothers. And when the marriage was coming close, one of the younger brothers got so nervous. He thought that this wedding of our sister and I will get scolded every day by this elder brother. And as the day came very close, this younger brother just disappeared from home. You know, can you believe? He just not could not bear the thought of getting insulted and embarrassed, etc., in front of relatives and friends by this short-tempered elder brother. Well, we do blame the elder brother and others involved there, but at the same time, the younger brother should not do that. Running away, palayanam, is no solution. In fact, in the elaborate and the longest chapter of Bhagavad Gita, namely the 18th chapter, Lord Krishna talks about how leaving some work, not acting, not in this present context, not trying to resolve a conflict at all, because it involves some hardship, is a tamasic approach. In the 8th shloka, he says, Dukkamityeva yat karma kayaklesha bhayatyajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naivatyaga phalam labhet. He calls it rajasa because it is dukkham, hard. I don't want to face that scenario. You handle it. And like that. That is a rajasa tyaga, which is not a proper tyaga. If you, tyaga is leaving, right? So you leave some activity and say, I am a viragi, I am a sannyasi, I gave up all those things. No, 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 no. That is not a tyaga endorsed by the scriptures. So are we ready to handle conflicts? Because if you don't do something at the right time, it will grow worse. As we say, we must nip the problem in the bud. A stitch in time saves nine. Therefore, friends, we talk of three things here. One is manage interactions. Second is have clear communication. Third is do prepare to resolve conflicts. Now, as I promised, in the first bullet or point, managing interactions, we have several possibilities. In interactions, within a few seconds, we realize that the other side is not interested sometimes in some meaningful work. He is depressed. He is probably not at all interested, that is motivated. I'm drawing a couple of points from Susan Fowler's famous book, Master Your Motivation. She says there is a suboptimal orientation in the context of motivation. Optimal is desirable, suboptimal means much to be desired. That suboptimal orientation marked by somebody not being interested, disinterested, or he feels that the external factors are making him do. Some nothing is coming out from himself. In other words, it's imposed upon him and so on. Therefore, from suboptimal scenario of motivational orientation, what is it that we can do to help that person or a bunch of people to move to optimal motivational orientation? And how do you define optimal orientation? When people that are concerned are aligned with what needs to be done, they are integrated, and the desire is inherent, not imposed from outside. So Western writers like Susan Fowler, I believe she is a professor in UCSD, University of California in San Diego, or is it the State University, but somewhere in San Diego. She's a professor, she's an academician. And you know how academicians approach topics with a different flavor. They classify, they synthesize, they analyze, they give various possibilities, and their thrust is more affairs of the world, of course, with good, noble intentions. Whereas our study many times is more spiritual. We are more concerned with adhyatmika goals. Whatever, there's a lot of common ground. So interaction has to motivate the other person. Sometimes it is to counsel the other person when he or she may be a little dejected, depressed. In fact, in the Gita, the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Vishada is dejection, and Lord Krishna is the master counselor. In the next 17 chapters, Sri Krishna actually pulls Arjuna out of his dejection, his Vishada, and helps him see his duty very clearly. The Sanskrit word for counseling is mantranam. No wonder in Mumbai, the commercial capital of India, the legislative building is called Mantralaya. If you go to Andhra Pradesh, Telangana or Karnataka and say Mantralaya, they will think of that town Mantralaya where Raghavendra Swami's temple is situated. But in Bombay, Mantralaya is where ministers consult each other, they discuss, and then they plan the growth of Maharashtra, the state. Mantra, that's correct word. Elsewhere, I have not seen that word. In Karnataka, for example, it is called Vidhana Sabha, Vidhana Sauda, Vidhana, which is legislation. In Bombay, Mantralaya is the name. We see a big board when we go to South Bombay. In Valmiki Ramayana, if I may make one more quick reference, Sri Rama advises Bharata in Ayodhya Kanda, 100th Sarga, that leaders have to always receive right counsel, right advice. They have to get it from right people, and for heaven's sake, they should not consult wrong people who may have some other motives. Anarthajnai mantranam na kartavyam, jnanavatam darshanam kartavyam, and also it is said by Sri Rama, a leader should never shut his door and ekachintanam arthanam. He should not do thinking on everything all by himself, refusing to consult knowledgeable people. So, counseling, that means discussing, consulting, getting the opinion, picking the brains of others, is part of interactions, human relationships. Sometimes we have to help another person in decision making. The other person is oscillating, and we carefully, with the right inputs, have to help him or her in taking right decision. And last is, there are many more, but one more, we have to clear serious misunderstandings. Many a time there is such confusion. In fact, in Ramayana, even Lakshmana comes to a serious misunderstanding. He is all set to shoot arrows at Bharata, who was coming towards Ram and Lakshman. And without delaying, Ram exhorts Lakshmana, hold on, hold back, don't act hastily. Let Bharata come near. We'll ask him what is the purpose of his coming. And it turns out Bharata had not come to attack Ram or Lakshman. He had come, in fact, with lot of devotion and reverence to invite them to come back to Ayodhya. See what a misunderstanding was in the mind of Lakshmana. Many of us sometimes come under some confusion, some misunderstanding, and we either do wrong action or we delay right action, which can prove to be very costly. As we think more about it, we wonder how come we have strained relationships and those people or these people here seem to have wonderful relationships. How do solid relationships come about? How do good relationships happen? And so we analyze it here. Good relationships don't happen accidentally. They are the result of understanding. When two sides understand each other, So how we understand people is very crucial in building beautiful relationships. Secondly, how we treat them. Please see, time and again, understanding and action have to go hand in hand. If you understand, but out of some laziness, out of some procrastinating tendency, we don't do what needs to be done, then it leaves behind a, a scar. Stephen Covey uses the expression emotional bank account. If I have understood somebody's need for a certain help, I've understood, but out of some procrastinating tendency, I don't actually help that person, then my emotional bank balance in the eyes of that person goes down. Whereas little things that need to be done, suppose, are done well in time. Like you come to know somebody in your neighborhood or somebody related to you in another town is has tested positive for COVID-19. The least you could do is to call that person. You are in Bangalore, that person is in Chennai. All right, call the person in Chennai and say, I'm sorry to know you have got COVID 19, you have tested positive. Take care, I hope you quickly recover from it. Then your emotional bank balance will rise. But if you say, well, I heard that, but I wanted to call, I thought I would write an email, but I could not decide email or call or email, and therefore many days passed. What is this indecisiveness? No wonder they have said indecision sometimes is worse than indigestion. So, how we understand and how we treat them. All of us have some of these shortcomings, and better late than never. We need to tie up the loose ends. And thirdly, between two people or two groups, there is always a history. The history we share determines the quality of relationships. That doesn't mean there is a dark cloud hanging over our relationship, even if a few things have gone wrong in the years gone by. We can act now. We can act with certain balance, certain mature outlooks. We should do things which improve the relation, not take it worse. Now, in Bhagavad Gita, working together in a team spirit has been indicated through the word yajna. And Swami Chinmayananji used to be excited while talking about yajna in chapter 3. Saha yajna praja srishtva purovacha prajapatihi. That's how it begins. I picked up for referring here the 13th verse where it is said Yajna shishtashinas santo muchyante sarvakilbishaihi bhunjate te tvagam papaha ye pachanti atmakaranat. Those who refuse to relate, those who refuse to give when they can, those who live for just themselves, Sri Krishna calls them papaha, sinful people, whereas Gurudev Chinmayananji translated yajna as cooperative endeavor. In the literal meaning of that third chapter, if you study, it is the cooperation between devatas in the heaven and nara, manushas, human beings on the earth. Ishtan devaha, wo deva dasyante, and you do yajna, please them, and they give various boons, please you. By your yajna sacrifice, gods are pleased, and by their gifts, you are pleased. So you please each other, you do your part. Men, human beings do their duty, and gods have their duty. We are not talking of the supreme god, the devatas, gods, suras. And you must hear Swamiji's commentary on that shloka. He says this applies everywhere, not even just between human beings and human beings. between human beings and Mother Nature. You take care of your land, you take care of your trees, you take care of your rivers. That is your, serving environment. And then that nature, that environment will bless you. Deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantaha shreya param avapsyata. This is relationship. Swamiji, Chinmayanandji, and then Vinoba Bhave have spoken wonderfully on yajna, dana, and tapaha. Dana also is Bhagavad Gita's way of emphasizing relationship between others and us. When we have more and somebody has less, we must part with some of our wealth or other resources with those who are in need. Another time we have to receive from them, for times keep changing. Therefore, hidden in some of these words, dynamic, meaningful, and value based relationships are talked about. Now, why are some relationships very hard? On one hand, we talk about good relationships. On the other, we have problem in all of us have. Neither anybody in the audience nor the speaker is free from some strained relationships. Life is such. Human life is necessarily marked. Even great Mahatmas, if you study their biography, they had hard times. Somebody very close to them would have just left them maybe overnight. Many things happen. Anyway, when we have strained relationships, misunderstanding, and so on, why are they so? It is said here, I have drawn a few points again from that wonderful book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by this Bradbury and Greaves. This has, in its own way, classified a lot of things. Now, relationships are not all that good because we had interactions, but not really relationship. Just interactions don't mean relationship. In what way? Many times the frequency was less. There were opportunities, but we did not spend much time together. Or even when we sat together, we did not talk much. Or when one side was raising a topic, the other side said, shall we discuss it another time? Postponing, avoiding. Therefore, the third bullet says, even when we spent time together, sat together on the same bench, there was no quality or depth. And we had opportunities, we let go of opportunities. And what is sad, sometimes we do that in the name of spirituality. I want to think of God. Now, a person sitting next to you also has God in him. Why not spend 2 minutes with God in that person? No, no, no. I am tired of these human relationships. I want to connect with God. We say, this is all not very right. We need to have a proper balance. A Kannada poet wrote a beautiful piece in his immortal work, which has some 945 verses. Kagga, it is called. One point from there I wish to share with you. He gives a beautiful metaphor. Think of your mind. All of us have this mind in us. Think of your mind as being a house of two rooms. If you have a house of two rooms, what would you do? Would you spend all the time in the inner room only? That's not right. That's not wise to do. Or would you spend all the time in the outer room only? That also is not good. He says, your mind is a house of two rooms. Please, I'm fond of saying, for heaven's sake, use both the rooms. Please use both the rooms. What is meant is in that same shloka, because of space problem, I don't give the whole verse and its translation. It says beautifully, if your mind is metaphorically thought of as a house of two rooms, Do use the outer room to interact with people, and do use the inner room to introspect, to inquire, to connect with God. In the name of God, don't neglect human relationships. And in your excitement about relating to all human beings, don't neglect God. Balance God and man, balance spirituality and mundane life till your last breath, as appropriate to the age and your position. Till our last breath, every one of us pretty much have a domain of human relationships and a domain of relationship with God. So those are indicated by DVG, that's how we call him, DV Gundappa. He indicates those two domains of public interaction and time with oneself as two rooms of one house, which is our mind. Now, in the context of all these relationships, at home or at work, anywhere, sometimes certain conflicts go from bad to worse. Why do conflicts fester like a wound going septic? Why do conflicts fester on occasions? We realize upon a little bit of thought, it is because we are responsible for it. When we could have done something, we passively avoided problems, or we just didn't have the skills to initiate a direct, constructive conversation. Many a time, somebody, maybe a third party, came to mediate, then we did not cooperate. We would just disappear, we would not be available. So, we must realize, and once more I would say, whatever happened in the past is over. So, here onwards, we get a chance to improve the relationship from our side. We must come out with noble gestures. Then conflicts, rather than getting bigger, will get smaller. But if we don't do that, conflicts explode. That means it becomes very damaging, very irreversible, irreparable damage can take place when people don't manage their anger or frustration. All of us have anger. There is nobody who is without anger. Some of us may not show it so much on our face, but we do have anger. We do have our frustration. One in a million, perhaps, those enlightened people, they don't have. They truly live in inspiration. Pujya Chinmayananji used to say, all work for happiness, but the enlightened person works out of happiness. Because he is happy, he works. Whereas you and I work to get happiness. Let it be aside. People choose to take their anger or frustration on somebody else many a time. A disturbs us and we go and take it out on B. Alas. In this context, Bhagavad Gita, at several places really, but I am picking it from 13th chapter. As most of you know, there are some 20 values at one place in chapter 13. Amanitvam Adambitvam, a famous portion. And over there, the value is given Arjavam. It comes in 16th chapter also, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi, Jnana Yoga, and so on. There also Arjavam comes. It comes in 18th chapter in the description of Brahma Swabhava, those sattvic people, what their qualities are, and so on. But in chapter 13, Arjavam, Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantihi, Arjavam. Now, Arjavam generally we just translate quickly, straightforwardness, and say, okay, let's go to the next shloka. But actually, Arjavam has many ramifications. When there is some misunderstanding, to take the initiative, to be proactive and diffuse the situation is also Arjava. Arjava literally means straightforwardness. Raju means straight, and the abstract noun of it, Raju Swabhava, is Arjava. And if only we come out with the Arjava, more open, more upfront, more straightforward, and then wisely act at the right time, then conflicts will reduce, misunderstanding can be cleared, and we will find that all relationships are a source of happiness. They do not strain us as they did before. So it is all in the eyes that see. Let us look at hard situations as golden opportunities, not only outside to set that right, but as we set it right, inwardly there is a release of good energy. We grow spiritually. I came across the statement of Peter Drucker, the all-time great management guru who was alive till 2005 as the slide shows. And one of his wonderful statements is, effective people feed on opportunities and starve on problems. As I got this yesterday only, Professor Pandey told me over a conversation. Effective people feed on opportunities and starve on problems. And ineffective people or defective people feed on problems. Again and again thinking about problems, they get more and more weakened, and they don't feed on opportunities. When opportunities are available, they say it is our upavas now. This is fasting time for us. They don't take the opportunities. When I read this, actually these COVID-19 times, all of us also are trying to improve our immunity. Even here at my kitchen, I have all those, some green tea, I have some ginger, I have some lavang clover, I have cloves, I have so many things that are good, but I also have some Haldiram namkeen and so on. As I enter the kitchen, I am in a dilemma. Shall I drink some green tea, which is good for health, or one more Nescafe or brew, right? So again and again, literally also in food, we can feed on healthy, nutritious food and starve or take much less of those things which make our palate feel good, or the other way, and which is the wiser way. So feeding on opportunities. Now, why do I go to Drucker? Yeah, this spirit is exactly what Sri Krishna conveys in the very beginning, in the second chapter, where his sermon begins. As you know, first chapter, Lord Krishna doesn't instruct, and literally there are 5 words in the mouth of Lord Krishna. That is also not spiritual advice. He just says, "Oh Partha, take a look at both the armies. Pashya Partha etan samavetan kurun." These are the 5 words. O Partha, see the Kauravas and Pandavas on both sides. Otherwise, first chapter, Sri Krishna does not speak. In the second chapter, there also, especially from 11th verse, he comes out as the spiritual teacher. Gita Acharya, he is from chapter 2, verse 11. So in 32nd shloka, he says, Swargadwaram apavritam. He says to Arjuna, don't look at this war as something terrible, and don't say, oh, what a bad prarabdha of mine that I have to be in this kind of scenario and all that. On the contrary, let me read 32. Yadrichaya chopapannam swargadwaramapavritam sukhina kshatriya partha labante yuddhamidrisham. Fortunate kshatriyas, fortunate soldiers get a chance like this, and the doors of heaven are open to you. In another shloka, little before or after, he also says, if you die, you will go to Veera Swarga. If you don't die, you will rule this kingdom. Tato va prakshasi swargam, jitva va mokshase mahim, tasmad uttishta kaunteya, yuddhaya krita nischaya, etc. What a motivational speech it is from Sri Krishna. Now, apply it to relationships. I know it is easy to say and difficult to do, that I fully realize. But friends, but that is the approach. For you, for me, for everyone. Strained relationships are things that we like to avoid. But no, we should not avoid. We should take a deep breath and think what is it we can do about it. At least reduce the damage. We should not further damage things. If not anything else, can we be quiet next time we come face to face with that person who really gets on our nerves and so on? The least we could do is keep mum, neither add to the problem nor oppose him in some way and so on. Then that's what Drucker would have meant. You have fed on the opportunity, whereas otherwise we feed on the problems and problems get worse. A few more points now. What skills can we develop? There are some do's and there are some don'ts. First of all, in some certain situations, we need to be firm. Let us not forget it. We cannot afford to be goody goody. I am a good person. Saying like that, we cannot let anything happen under our nose. We have to respond kindly but with authority. Someone used the nice expression, use iron hands with velvet gloves. I need not explain. Empower others by helping them see how they can do things differently. If they themselves see, so much the better. And some of the things that we should avoid are when our mind is agitated by somebody's behavior, uh, we do some negative things. We want to achieve something at the expense of them, or we make some negative statements about them in front of them or behind their backs. We belittle them sometimes, and as we do it two, three, four times, slowly they realize this person needs to say such things about me, then only his emotional need is fulfilled. So they start judging us as people with problems. And Bhagavad Gita touches upon all this, really speaking, in the form of those values. For example, in chapter 16, we have those values. Abhayam sattva samshuddhihi, jnana yoga vyavastitihi, danam damascha yajnascha, swadhyayastapa arjavam, ahimsa satyam akrodaha. Yeah, 26 values. 26 values in three shlokas. And I have picked up three here. Sattva Samshuddhi. Especially it implies purity of motives. In our interactions, in our relationships, we should not have impure motives. That is, that we should not wish that the other person comes to suffer and so on. We should have the motive. I don't want him to suffer, nor do I want to suffer. I want to do something whereby both sides get better. Both sides can breathe more comfortably. That is Sattva Samshuddhi. Apaishuna is avoiding backbiting, saying some negative things about somebody behind his back. That is Paishuna. Apaishuna is not doing it. And Mardhavam is the velvet gloves. Even if we have to say sometimes something hard, something unpleasant, can we say it in the softest way, beginning with words like, I'm sorry to tell you, please do not misunderstand, but the truth is, this is how the situation is now. Please uh, bear with me for saying this. So that's the velvet gloves. So Sattva Shamshuddhi, Apaishwanam, these are found in two shlokas over there. Now I want to share with you something that this morning I found out when I was entering Yahoo homepage. This was there. First of all, the news is, most of you know, especially those living in India, know very well. There has been a particular cosmetic, some cream, which is called Fair and Lovely. Fair and Lovely, to make your skin lighter or something. And some people have been objecting to it. Even after the British left our country some 70 years ago, why this fancy for fair skin, white skin, and so on? Even during that time, we should not have been there. But Hindustan Unilever now, was not paying heed to any of these protests. And this young girl here, I got to know her name today only, Hiran. Chandana Hiran, 22-year-old. She started a petition some time back on change.org, and thousands, some very huge number supported it, and the FMCG, fast moving consumer goods giant Hindustan Unilever, announced yesterday, I think, or day before, that we are dropping that name. We will not call it Fair and Lovely anymore. The word fair, they are removing it. And they have given a wonderful, beautiful, uh, politically correct statement. Let me quickly see whether I can read that, because it's worth reading. Where is that? Yeah, maybe it appears on your. FMCG giant Hindustan Unilever has dropped the name Fair from its famous, or not famous really, from its infamous skin whitening cream Fair and Lovely. After years of anti-colorism petitions and protests against racial prejudice, HUL has said that it wants to make its skincare portfolio more inclusive and celebrate a more diverse portrayal of beauty. Very well said, but this is called politically correct language. Beauty has, is much more than color of skin. Beauty is much more than many factors. Beauty is, as they say, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So, a big company like HUL has to have an inclusive outlook and a more diverse portrayal of beauty. The woman who has triggered this change is 22-year-old Chandana Hiran, who started a petition on change.org demanding that Fair and Lovely change their narrative after years of regressive advertisements and branding. So the giant had to kneel down, and I bring this here in our discussion on relationships because in her case, this young lady, I don't know more about her, she fought injustice. She not only understood, she became aware, socially aware. Hey, look at this. This big company is doing this. What a bias. What a prejudice. It's saying, buy my product, buy my skin cream and make your skin lighter and something like that. She first was aware, and then she took the step that she could on change.org, that website. Therefore, action follows awareness. And in chapter 18, Sri Krishna says, that is called Sattvika Karma, when we go for an action against injustice, we go for something that needs to be done without personal like or dislike. In 18th chapter, 23rd verse, Sattvika Karma is described in this way, Niyatam Sangarahitam Aragadveshatakrutam Afala Prepsuna Karma Yattat satvikam uchyate. That which our heart says, this is your duty. You must do it. If you don't do, who else would do it? In this way, if the inner voice is saying. I'm giving this explanation because this Swadharma, yesterday also questions had come. What this, what's her name, Chandana Hiran did, I'm not saying everybody should do. See, all of us are made for taking up certain things. Our heart says to us. So when our heart, when our inner voice guides us and assures us, you have the capacity, you have the guts, you have the skills, you have the resources, you have, if not immediately, you have the potential to tap from within yourself. Go. This won't come in every matter for every one of us. Some of us are, guided in one field of activity, somebody else in another field of activity. We don't have to imitate M.K. Gandhi or Chandana Hiran. We may need not imitate a political leader or a social reforms person. We need to do that with which our heart actually resonates. And every one of us is made for significant contribution. Whether the society recognizes it or not is another question. But we are made for significant contribution in particular areas. And we need to see where we belong. And in that field, awareness should be followed up by action. So we have real life examples here too. There are some more theory. Let me not go to those things. To conclude, I would say that social awareness has to be enhanced by watchfulness, by observing, by open mind. Then only we come to know what is going on in small and big scenarios, how others are feeling, especially if someone is put to some injustice right at home or in our neighborhood. We must know. Then some among us will find that we are the ones who should act now. If we don't act, who else? Then we get into social action. So awareness is the third area, and action, I call it social action as though it is for the big society. It can be sometimes. Sometimes it may be right at home. Small steps. Eknath Ishwaran says when at the age of 10 he had some ailment and for a year he was asked not to take salt. Doctors told the boy Ishwaran, you can't take salt for 1 year. You have this health problem. He did not fully understand, the young little boy. But what he can never forget for rest of his life is next day when he was made to sit separately and food without salt was served to him. Next to him sat his grandmother. She said, I am also going to eat the saltless food made for this boy, my grandson. And the grandson, Ishwaran, asked her, but you don't have that health problem. Why are you avoiding salt? With a smile, she says, just to give you company. For a year, I will also avoid salt. He was shaken. So this action, following certain genuine concern, could be in as simple a setting like within home, within the walls of a little house. And this famous spiritual teacher later, Eknath Ishwaran, for rest of his life considered his grandmother, not some Swami in orange robes or anything. He considered his grandmother as his guru, his spiritual teacher. I had the privilege and blessing to meet Ishwaran 3 times in Northern California. What a gentle person, and he left behind literature on Gita and many other spiritual works in wonderful, beautiful English. He was a professor of English after all, but more than language, the content really touches our hearts. So friends, with this we conclude the 5 lectures on emotional intelligence, looked at in 4 areas: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Hari Om. Om Namo Bhagavate.